Gwenydd, lovely to have you here. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Dom. Very good.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we will pass the controls straight over to you and you may begin your presentation.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Are you seeing my slides?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, let's get started. Well, I won't worry about an introduction since Dom has already given me a wonderful introduction. I'm Gwenydd Jones and I've been a freelance translator primarily for 15 years now, and that is why I'm here today to talk to you about the subject of how to become and succeed as a translator. Whoops. In this talk, I'm going to do two halves. In the first half, I'm going to give you a status update on the world of translation as I see it. And in the second half, I'm going to go on and talk to you about what I consider to be the pillars of success for translators and for freelancers in general: excellence, diversification, and marketing. Hopefully there'll be some time for some Q&A at the end, but if there isn't, then feel free to send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn for a chat afterwards. Before I can look forward and talk about looking forward in the career of translator, I have to take a moment to recognize the deep devastation that AI has caused within the translation community. It has created a general sense of grief for what went before and what was our art and how it felt to always be drafting from scratch. With that recognized, though, we have to move forward. When I was thinking about what I was going to say to you today, under the subject of how to become and succeed as a translator, I had to ask myself, is that the right question? Or is the question, can you become and succeed as a translator now in 2025? And the question is so big that it was too big for me to answer within the realms of my experience. And so I reached out to some friends and colleagues in the industry, and I asked them for their opinions and thoughts to help me convey this status update to you today. So during the course of this presentation, I'll be sharing a few quotes. You may recognize some of the names, and in other cases, you probably won't recognize the names because they are working translators and even people who are just starting out on their translation careers. I would like to start by addressing the AI elephant in the room. To get this wonderful illustration, I consulted AI. I'm going to read the prompt that I gave. I asked for an elephant with a trunk and ears and a tail, but instead of its body, the letters AI appear. Now, they say AI isn't as good as humans, but I don't think that a human could have done as good a job as AI did there at illustrating the point I'm about to make. AI needs a human pilot to provide useful content. Those are the words of my friend and colleague Ellen Singer, who is a Dutch, Spanish, and English trilingual translator. From where I'm sitting, what I can see about the world of commercial translation is that post-editing now rules. The language service providers are in serious competition to win clients and using a lot of downward pricing, not that that has ever been any different. Within this competitive scenario, that isn't necessarily bad news for translators. Translators who know what they're doing can make a lot of money post-editing. And of course, translators are still working from scratch. Ellen and I have been working this year on the translation and editing of 3 novels, and we're scarcely using any AI to do that. Greg Olswede is an experienced ATA certified American translator Spanish to English and an Olympian, a very motivational person. And he said to me, there will always be a need for humans in the process, as the perfect translation doesn't exist. He expressed how it's not hard to find some friend or neighbor or somebody at a party who is ready to tell you that AI is good enough to replace humans, but that's because they're not really informed. AI doesn't have the one right answer, and anyway, in translation, there isn't one right answer. You've always got to think, is the translation right for context and audience? Here are 4 AI elephants that were presented to me when I gave my prompt. None of them are fit for purpose as they stand. So the question is, what does a successful translator look like in 2025? As you may have seen here, I had to ask AI for that question, and I got this picture of a very successful looking chap. I don't know what those paper things are on his desk, and I can only say that he is putting me to shame as regards the number of flags in my office. Somebody who does know a lot about success is Riza McNabb, the CEO of the Association of Translation Companies. She sent me a very thoughtful email, and the quote I chose was this: "If individual language specialists are able to pivot from providing text-only translation to providing versatile language services, their future is going to be really interesting." What Rice is underlining there is the need for linguists to combine their languages with technology, but also the evolving role of the translator, where we now become a language specialist. Localization is starting to rule the roost. When a company wants to go international, it's not anymore about just translating my website from one language to another. It is everything that surrounds that localization, that changing of the marketing or of the product so that it fits the new culture. Nobody is better placed than a translator to advise somebody on how to move comfortably between two cultures. In relation to these comments about technology, I had some comments from Matt Leedham, a Spanish and French to English translator and an ex-student of mine who has now been joined a master's degree in translation in Spain and is lecturing on their undergraduate translation and interpretation course. He said, "The impact of AI on translation has been a constant theme at the university, and like it or not, I have had to adapt to the new technologies. This isn't optional." And in relation to Rice's second comment about the translator as a language partner, translation meeting cultural communication, I spoke to Tess Whitty, a very well-known English to Swedish translator, about what she's been doing lately. She said, "I saw a need among clients for SEO knowledge, so I did training in that. Since I translated a lot of software, I saw a need for knowledge in UX, so I did training in that. All these little steps got me a job as a language-specific content manager." Tess is somebody who knows the importance of CPD and of evolving. Another point that came up a lot in these different conversations I had was underlining how important it is for a freelancer to be a marketer. Fernando Cuñado de Castro is a well-known English to Spanish lawyer linguist who runs a training company in Spain, and I was very pleased to hear his recording where he told me, "In our small translation boutique, we are thriving right now." One thing that Fernando reminded me of is that resting on your laurels with a few clients no longer works. It was never a good idea, and a lot of the translators who are struggling now, it's because they had 1 or 2 clients and one of them has stopped calling. Freelancers must be adept at marketing and self-promotion to keep a wide portfolio of clients so that they've got different avenues to go down when things don't go as they're expecting. Another very important point to think about now is the opportunities with direct clients. With the language service providers struggling in the middle, there are more opportunities than ever for the freelancer to skip over them and go direct to the end client, providing this boutique service that so many of them need. Deep specialization is still important, and there are a number of translators who do very well owing to that. Sarah Bauya is a French and Spanish to English translator, lawyer linguist, and she is the lead tutor on our French to English translation courses. She said, specializing in one or more subject areas linked to your background and interests, whether that's law, medicine, music, or football, makes it easier to target your services and access premium work. As a solicitor and as a massive fan of football, not something I understand, Sarah was able to put those two skills together, and then she qualified not once but twice with 2 DIP trans, and that was a pretty potent formula for success, and she does some very interesting work related to law and football. Perhaps closer to my heart is diversification. These are the words of Amy Bathurst, a Spanish to English translator who got double cert trans and is now starting out as a freelancer. As translators, we are skilled in a way that means we can offer so many different services, whether it's proofreading, editing, copywriting, transcription, or something else. By diversifying, we are able to offer more to our clients and to keep up a more consistent stream of work when there's a lull in translation demand. With all of that in mind, I'm now going to move on to what I consider to be the pillars of success today for anybody wanting to either get into or to continue in the world of translation and language services. These are excellence, diversification, and marketing. Given the title of this presentation, I thought I should at least have one slide about how you become a translator in 2025. And so with an AI elephant in a nutshell, you need to train and qualify. You can train at university or at a private academy, and you can qualify by getting the Cert Trans or the DIP Trans from the CIOL, or by doing a degree, probably a master's degree. Once you're trained and qualified, you have 2 broad options. One is to go freelance, and the other is to work in-house. If you decide to go freelance, then you'll probably be working for intermediaries, agencies of some type, possibly translation agencies, but also marketing agencies, and or direct clients. What that job is likely to look like, I've described as Translator Plus. You are not likely to be only translating anymore. You're going to be translating and offering a range of other related services, which I'll tell you a bit more in a minute. You may also find that you do very well there if, like Sarah, you're a subject specialist. If freelancing isn't right for you, it may be better to look for an in-house position, and that will involve applying for jobs at agencies, at companies that have an international element to them, and at institutions such as the EU and the UN. Once again, in most of these roles, you probably won't be doing pure translation. You'll be doing translation alongside other related services, as maybe project management. And that is where this idea of the language specialist, the ability to work with companies on localization will come more into play, working in-house in localization departments. In the rest of this presentation, I am thinking more of freelancers than of in-house translators. But if you are just starting out or you're moving across into language services and you're not certain whether you should go freelance or go in-house, then I hope that what I'm going to say here will help you understand whether your personality and your needs are better suited to freelance or in-house employment. Thinking about what makes a freelancer excellent, I split it into 3 groups: attitude, credentials, and USP, unique selling point. When I think about the attitude that is needed for a freelancer, there are some personality or some characteristics that I can recognize in all the successful freelancers I know. As a freelancer, you have complete freedom, which is wonderful, but you also have complete responsibility for every single thing that goes on to ensure your success. And then if you have a family, they also come under this umbrella of responsibility. And you need to go in open-eyed that sometimes that is going to be a very challenging situation. I think anybody in business needs optimism. I don't believe pessimists ever try to go into entrepreneurship or business. The successful people I know are all ethical in their work. They treat honestly with clients. They produce the best work they can. They're also very self-motivated because you've got to get up in the morning and you've got to work the hours and nobody is making you. It's probable that as a freelancer, you'll end up working yourself harder than an employer ever would. They probably wouldn't be allowed to by law. You also need adaptability and flexibility. You don't know what's coming in business and you've got to be ready to adapt to keep things going and do what's necessary. You also have to be reliable because clients won't give you a second chance if you're not. Another characteristic that is important is humility. You're going to make mistakes and have problems and get complaints and negative feedback. And I think a lot of the success is about how you're able to take that on board and recognize where you need to make changes. That links into pragmatism, an attitude to problem solving and not going in towards conflict. To ensure that firmness is also needed, you need to know where to draw the line with clients, or else some of them will try to walk all over you. Finally, curiosity is essential because you've got to keep learning, you've got to keep doing your CPD, and you're going to need the drive to keep doing that, and just plain grit to keep going, regardless of whether things are going well or badly. This is a picture of what most translators do on a Saturday morning. They get all their certificates out and then just roll around in them because that is how much training and qualifying we do. The basic credentials you're going to need to get work as a translator is some proof of your language capability. That doesn't have to be a university degree. It could simply be that you're bilingual. Maybe you have got a certificate from one of the awarding bodies in the country where the relative language is spoken. It could even be a translation qualification, because if you can't read and write in the language in question, you're not going to get that translation qualification. In terms of qualifications, the main ones on the table are the Master in Translation Studies or the Cert Trans and the Dip Trans. My opinion in a nutshell on that is that I recommend the Dip Trans. You're also going to need to do continuing professional development throughout your career, and with particular focus on staying up to date on technology. I highly recommend joining a professional association. Translation is an unregulated profession, and so when clients see that you're a member of an association, you give them a lot of assurance regarding your ethics and the way you approach your work. And ideally, you want some proof of any specializations you're claiming to have. If you have a degree in the subject, wonderful. If not, perhaps prior work experience or CPD and experience gained on the job. Finally, your unique selling point, and I can't tell you what that is because that's personal to you, but to give you some ideas, it may be related to some work experience you've had, like my example of Sarah as a solicitor. It could be expertise or specialization, which may come from a hobby. If I think about my friend Greg, who I quoted earlier, he's an Olympian. No one is going to question his knowledge of orienteering. Additional services. It could be as simple as being able to handle complex formatting, or it could be a more complex service such as keyword research. Perhaps your unique selling point is somewhere in your process. Maybe you always guarantee the 4 I's principle for end clients, so you've always got quality checks. Or Ellen, when she says her USP is that she always tells clients about mistakes in the source text. Since she generally works with direct clients, they really appreciate that. And perhaps it's simply an aspect of your personality. I think everybody has people who email them and sometimes they get this sinking feeling, and other times you smile and you're really happy to hear from that person. Your politeness and your personality could be a deciding factor as to whether people decide to keep working with you. Now thinking about the second pillar, which is diversification. I've also split that into 3 categories: language related, skill based, or a related field. I had to bring back my successful translator because he's just so successful. It's clear that he is diversified into interpreting, looking at that headset, and I bet he's also a language teacher. The third point that I put there was this language specialist, which comes back into this sort of new evolving role that isn't really clearly established yet, but providing language consultancy, localization consultancy. There is, of course, I didn't put it on the list, but the option of adding more languages to your repertoire. In terms of skill-based diversification, translators have a lot to work with because our skill set is so complex. Revision and proofreading, it's generally taken for granted that a translator can offer those services because they form part of the skill set needed to produce a professional translation. As far as post-editing is concerned, if you want to work commercially with translation agencies, it is also something that is pretty much a given now that you are going to be able to offer that service. Transcreation and creative translation is an excellent skill to offer if you're specializing in marketing. Subtitling is big news, and so is transcription. Amy, who I quoted earlier, who has only been freelancing for about a year, told me that she's getting so much transcription work that she isn't finding enough time to market herself. Humanization is a new service that I've been seeing a lot lately. It could be bilingual, or maybe it's just monolingual, taking the boring AI text and giving it that human spark that it lacks. Copywriting is again very closely related to translation because of the writing skills that we develop, as are the different forms of editing. Copy editing, you might require a little training, but it's very similar to the editing skills involved in revision. And then developmental editing, which involves a little more training to look at the larger work. But once again, as basically professional readers, translators are very well set up to be editors. You may also like to diversify into related fields, and there are a million options there. To give you some ideas: SEO services, that is one that I offer. Graphic design is a related field where sometimes you'll get clients wanting both the translation and the graphic design. We've got user experience, as Tess mentioned. So social media management, learning design, project management, either in-house or as a freelancer, and the list goes on. I'm sure we could work together to brainstorm a lot more options. And last but not least, marketing. Now, some people tell me, I hate marketing. And what I would say to you at this stage is change that for I love marketing. And if you don't feel that way, just keep I love marketing. Keep saying it till it's true, because you must become adept, at least at basic marketing. Effective marketing is just as important as gaining a qualification. Unless you have a professional online presence, no one will know you have passed the DIP Trans. Those are the words of Victoria Lewin, who just passed the DIP Trans last year, I think, and who is now freelancing as a translator and a copywriter. To break down marketing, I have split it into what I consider to be non-optional, desirable, and then add-ons if you really get into it. The basic non-optional marketing that every freelancer should have in place is a strong LinkedIn profile, and they should also be taking steps to network. Building a strong LinkedIn profile isn't that hard in that you can do a course to learn how to do it and then execute. I did a 2-hour workshop on it a couple of weeks ago for pros.com and have already seen how the attendees' profiles are looking great. It's not something to worry about, just learn how to do it and get it done. And then the networking, well, it would be lovely if that was always in person, like in this photo, but you can do plenty of networking online. You can join interest groups, go to training and try to network with the students there, network by interacting with people on social media, reach out to people if you think that you have something in common or you can help them in some way. That's the key tip about networking, is that you have to think about it like investment with compound interest. You don't go into networking trying to take. You go into networking trying to give and trying to help and contribute. And then over time, as your network grows, the network itself starts to pay you back, often in ways that you don't expect. It is desirable for freelancers to have their own website, and I also put guest posting there. In terms of having your own website, my opinion, after spending quite a lot of money on a series of websites, some of which have failed and some of which have been very successful, is iteration. Any website that I start, I do pretty much myself, and I build the content up and test it out and then see if I still like it a week later or a month later and edit it until I'm happy that I've got something that works. That's when I would start putting money into it. And in terms of guest posting, the reason I'm suggesting that rather than starting your own blog is that it's much easier. You can write one good article and try to get it published somewhere. If you're a member of the Chartered Institute of Linguists, I believe you could pitch them for their blog. Or you could publish on LinkedIn and just put out a few articles so that you're still getting exposure and you're getting backlinks to your website, but you're not committing to the bigger time commitment and effort of actually running a blog. Then, once you become a marketing rock star and you want to expand even further, here are some things you can consider doing. Going on to some other social media channels apart from LinkedIn, running your own blog, running a newsletter, teaching, doing public speaking, running a podcast or getting interviewed on somebody else's podcast, and running a YouTube channel or getting interviewed on someone else's YouTube channel. I've done everything on that list except for running my own podcast, and my advice as a result of that would be to start by choosing one and doing it really well before you move on to the next one. It's much better to have one effective marketing channel than to have lots of little ones that aren't really doing much for you. So in answer to how to become and succeed as a translator, the final quote is given over to Suzanne Stevens. She is a translator who's now in her 60s. She's been translating for over 30 years and has done lots of books. But it wasn't until a few years back that she actually decided to start training, and she passed all 3 papers of the DipTrans on her first attempt. And last year she developed her first website. And what she wrote to me was in Italian, rinnovare o morire, renew or die. And that is a very succinct way to sum up how to move forward in business. As far as what I think that there are always going to be opportunities for linguists who strive for excellence. And I know for a fact that there is still work for translators. I have 1,000 words on my desk waiting for me to translate them this afternoon. In terms of succeeding in business, it is very important to have a mindset of curiosity, always trying to learn, of adaptability, so that you're always ready to do what the market is demanding, and of growth, both personally and professionally. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm Gwenydd Jones. I'm the founder of the Translators Studio, where we specialize in teaching the art of translation and preparing translators for the CertTrans and DipTrans exams. If you'd like to have a look at my freelance profile, then you can find me and contact me on gwenydd.com.
Thank you very much, Gwen, for the wonderful presentation.